What's the biggest lie you've ever told yourself? That you'll start tomorrow? That you're not ready? That success happens to other people? I want you to think about something important. The most successful people in history weren't necessarily the most talented or the luckiest. They were the ones who mastered the art of productive self-deception. You heard me right. If you want to win, you must learn to lie, not to others, but to the limiting inside your head that says you can't, you shouldn't, or you won't. Success leaves clues. When you study achievement across any field, business, sports, arts, or sciences, you find a common pattern. Winners tell themselves empowering lies until those lies become their truth. The amateur says, I hope I can. The professional says, I will, even when every shred of evidence suggests otherwise. I was broke at 25, not just broke, devastated financially, emotionally, spiritually. I had made all the wrong choices, trusted all the wrong people, and followed all the wrong advice. One afternoon, sitting at my small kitchen table, looking at bills I couldn't pay, I told myself an outrageous lie. This is temporary. I'm destined for extraordinary success. Nothing in my external reality supported this statement. Yet I repeated it daily, hourly, until it rewired my thinking. Within 6 months, that lie transformed my actions so dramatically that my income quadrupled. Within 3 years, it had increased tenfold. The truth about winning starts with understanding this crucial distinction. Circumstances happen to everyone, but not everyone creates the same meaning from their circumstances. When you change the meaning, you change everything. Have you ever noticed how two people can experience identical setbacks, yet one crumbles while another flourishes? What's the difference? It's not what happens to them. It's the story they tell themselves about what happens. Think of your life as a garden. Most people look at the weeds in their garden and tell themselves, my garden is overrun. Nothing good can grow here. Winners look at the same garden and say, these weeds are evidence of fertile soil. Once I clear them, anything can grow here. Both statements contradict present reality. Both are technically lies, but one leads to defeat, the other to triumph. Personal responsibility is the foundation of all achievement. Nothing significant happens until you accept that your life today is the direct result of your past choices, not your conditions, not your parents, not the economy, not politics, your choices. This is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because you can no longer blame external factors for your situation. Liberating because once you own your choices, you gain the power to make new ones. I know a woman who grew up in absolute poverty. Her father abandoned the family when she was 4. Her mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. By conventional wisdom, her future was predetermined. Limited education, limited opportunities, limited life. But she told herself a different story. My circumstances don't define me. I define me. Was this factually accurate at the time? No, society had already written her off. The statistics predicted her failure, yet she persisted in her lie until reality reorganized itself around her belief. Today, she runs 3 successful companies and employs over 200 people. When asked about her success, she says, I simply refuse to subscribe to the truth others assign to me. This brings us to an uncomfortable reality. Most people prefer the familiar pain of their current situation to the unfamiliar discomfort of growth. They've settled into a comfortable relationship with their limitations. They've built an identity around their struggles. Ask yourself, what pain have you become comfortable with? What limitations have you befriended? What excuses have you memorized so thoroughly that they sound like wisdom? The quality of your life ultimately depends on the quality of questions you ask yourself. Poor questions create poor results. Powerful questions create powerful results. Instead of asking, why does this always happen to me? Ask, how can I use this to grow stronger? Instead of asking, who's to blame? Ask, what can I learn? Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what if I succeed beyond my wildest dreams? These questions might seem like self-deception at first. After all, you don't have the answers yet, but they plant seeds in your mind that will grow into solutions. Winners understand that emotion follows motion. You don't have to feel confident to act confidently. You don't have to feel motivated to take action. You don't have to feel worthy to pursue your dreams. Act as if you already are what you aspire to be. This isn't pretending, it's practicing. It's rehearsing greatness until greatness becomes natural. I once coached a salesman who hadn't met his quota in 18 months. His confidence was shattered. I gave him a simple instruction. For the next 30 days, before every sales call, tell yourself you're the most effective salesperson in your company. But that's not true, he protested. Exactly, I said. That's the point. Tell yourself this lie until your actions align with it. He felt foolish at first, but he did it faithfully. 30 days of productive self-deception. By day 14, his posture had changed. By day 21, his carried new authority. By day 30, he'd exceeded his monthly quota for the first time in nearly 2 years. Did his skills magically improve? No. His standards rose to meet his new self-image. Once he believed he was excellent, mediocrity became unacceptable to him. The market pays for value. This is an unalterable economic law. If you want more reward, you must become more valuable, not just to yourself, but to others. The question isn't, what can I get, but what can I become? Most people focus on having more money, having more time, having more recognition. Winners focus on becoming more skilled, more disciplined, more insightful. Having is temporary. Becoming is permanent. You might be thinking, but this all sounds like positive thinking. I need practical strategies. Let me correct that misconception immediately. Productive self-deception isn't about thinking positively. It's about thinking strategically. It's about deliberately adopting beliefs that serve your growth, even when those beliefs contradict your current reality. The amateur says, I am what I am. The professional says, I am what I choose to become. Think about Roger Bannister. Before 1954, medical experts insisted that running a mile in under 4 minutes was physically impossible for humans. The truth was well established until Bannister decided to believe differently. He ran the mile in 3:59.4, shattering not just a record but a universal belief system. Within 1 year of his achievement, 16 other runners also broke the 4-minute barrier. Did human physiology suddenly evolve? Of course not. What changed was what people believed was possible. The impossible became possible once someone refused to accept the prevailing truth. Your potential exists beyond the boundaries of what you currently believe about yourself. Every significant breakthrough in human history began as an absurd idea, a lie that someone told themselves until it became reality. Now there's an important distinction to make here. The lies I'm advocating aren't delusions. They're aspirational truths, statements that aren't yet factual, but can become factual through dedicated action. When an overweight person says, I'm athletic and fit, that's not helpful self-deception if they continue eating poorly and avoiding exercise. The lie must guide action. It must be a compass, not a fantasy. I call these bridge beliefs. They bridge the gap between your current reality and your desired reality. They must be believable enough to adopt, but ambitious enough to inspire change. If you're earning $50,000 a year, telling yourself you'll make $5 million next month isn't a productive lie. It's a fantasy that will ultimately demoralize you. But telling yourself you have the capacity to double your income within a year, that's a bridge belief that can transform your actions. Success requires both humility and audacity. The humility to recognize where you are, and the audacity to envision where you could be. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a day, and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. They swing between unrealistic short-term expectations and pessimistic long-term projections. Winners reverse this pattern. They're patient with daily progress, but impatient with long-term complacency. They understand that achievement compounds like interest, invisible at first, then suddenly substantial. Consider this: if you improve just 1% daily, after 1 year you'll be 37 times better, not 365% better. That's the power of compound growth. Small improvements, applied consistently, create exponential results. But consistency demands discipline, and discipline demands purpose. You must know why you're pursuing excellence. Is it for recognition, security, impact, legacy? There's no right answer, but there must be an answer, one that resonates deeply enough to pull you through inevitable difficulties. I knew a man who built a successful construction company from nothing. During the 2008 recession, he lost everything. At 57, he faced a devastating choice: retire with whatever he could salvage or rebuild from scratch. He chose to rebuild, but not for money. I realized my true purpose wasn't building structures, he told me. It was building people, teaching my employees skills that would sustain their families for generations. With this renewed purpose, he created a company twice as successful as his first, with an unprecedented employee retention rate. The lie he told himself: my best years aren't behind me, they're ahead of me. At 57, that statement contradicted conventional wisdom. 10 years later, it had become his reality. Your actions always reveal your true beliefs, not what you say you believe, but what you actually believe. If you claim to value health, but consistently choose comfort over exercise, your actions reveal your authentic belief. Immediate comfort matters more to you than long-term vitality. This isn't a judgment. It's an observation that can lead to greater self-awareness. When your stated beliefs and your actions conflict, your actions always tell the truth about your priorities. Winners align their actions with their aspirations by gradually shifting their identity. They don't just set goals. They become the kind of person who achieves those goals naturally. Want to write a book? Become a writer by writing daily, even if only for 15 minutes. Want financial freedom? Become an investor by investing consistently, even if only small amounts at first. Want better relationships? Become a giver by adding value to others daily, even in simple ways. Identity drives behavior far more effectively than willpower. Willpower eventually exhausts itself. Identity generates its own momentum. Here's a powerful exercise. Complete the sentence: I am the kind of person who, with statements that bridge your current and desired reality. I am the kind of person who follows through on commitments. I am the kind of person who learns from every experience. I am the kind of person who adds value to others. These statements might feel like lies initially. That's perfect. Remember, if you want to win, you must learn to lie strategically, purposefully, to the limiting beliefs that have held you captive. The greatest prison isn't built of concrete and steel. It's built of limiting beliefs reinforced over decades. Most people live their entire lives without realizing they hold the key to their own cell. How do you recognize your limiting beliefs? Listen to your language. Phrases like "that's just how I am," "I could never do that," or "that might work for others, but my situation is different," reveal the borders of your self-imposed prison. Every time you say "I can't," add the word "yet" to the end of the sentence. This simple linguistic shift transforms a permanent limitation into a temporary obstacle. Consider how your environment either reinforces or challenges your self-perception. Winners deliberately structure their environment to make excellent performance inevitable. They remove temptations, reduce friction for positive habits, and surround themselves with people who embody their aspirational identity. The 5 people you spend the most time with shape your expectations, standards, and beliefs about what's possible for you. Choose these relationships with extreme care. Each one is either lifting your standards or lowering them. There is no neutral influence. I recommend conducting a relationship audit annually. List the people with whom you spend the most time. For each person, ask, does this relationship make me stronger or weaker, more focused or more distracted, more or less likely to achieve my potential? This isn't about discarding people callously. It's about being intentional with your time and energy, which are your most precious resources. The path to winning requires strategic discomfort. Growth happens at the edge of your abilities, in the space where challenge exceeds comfort but doesn't reach overwhelm. Most people avoid this space religiously. They choose either comfortable activities where success is guaranteed, or overwhelming challenges where failure seems inevitable. Both choices prevent growth, one through stagnation, the other through demoralization. Winners deliberately occupy the growth zone. They seek challenges calibrated to stretch their capabilities just beyond their current limits. They understand that temporary discomfort is the price of permanent improvement. I teach a simple framework called Daily Disciplines of Excellence. These aren't complicated strategies. They're fundamental practices that, performed consistently, create extraordinary outcomes. Rise early and claim the first hour of your day for personal development. Study your field daily, even if only for 15 minutes. Exercise your body to strengthen your mind. Plan tomorrow before you end today. Review your goals twice daily. Express gratitude for what you have while working toward what you want. Add value to someone's life every day without expectation of return. None of these practices is revolutionary alone. Their power comes from consistency. It's not what you do occasionally that shapes your life. It's what you do consistently. Most people dramatically overestimate the complexity of success. They think achievement requires some secret strategy or privileged information. In reality, extraordinary success comes from doing ordinary things with extraordinary consistency. The lie most winners tell themselves is, I can be consistent when others cannot. This statement contradicts human nature. We're wired for novelty and variation, not consistency. Yet those who achieve greatness act as if they're naturally disciplined until discipline actually becomes their nature. You've heard that it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's a myth. Research shows it takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days, depending on the habit's complexity and your individual characteristics. The average is 66 days. This means you must persist through the awkward phase of habit formation, that uncomfortable period when your new behavior feels unnatural and your old patterns call to you like old friends. Most people abandon new habits during this phase, then conclude they lack discipline. In reality, they simply misunderstood the process. Discipline isn't a personality trait. It's a skill developed through practice. You become disciplined by acting as if you already are disciplined, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Remember this fundamental truth: your current circumstances are temporary, but your principles determine your destination. Circumstances change constantly. Principles endure. When you build your life on principles, integrity, responsibility, excellence, growth, contribution, you create a foundation that can withstand any economic or personal storm. Trends come and go. Principles remain. The true measure of your character isn't how you act when everything goes according to plan. It's how you respond when everything falls apart. I know a woman who lost her business, her home, and her marriage in the same month. By any reasonable standard, she had every right to collapse under such pressure. Instead, she asked herself, what can I learn from this that I couldn't have learned any other way? That question, which contradicted the truth of her devastating circumstances, became her bridge to rebuilding. 3 years later, she had created a more fulfilling business, purchased a more suitable home, and established healthier relationships than before her losses. Was her initial question a lie? Absolutely. There was nothing obvious to learn in that moment except despair. Yet by insisting on finding value in her tragedy, she transformed her experience from punishment to education. Winners aren't immune to failure. They're simply better at extracting wisdom from it. They don't fail less. They learn more. They transform setbacks into setups for future success. This brings us to a critical point. Winners take full responsibility, not just for their actions, but for their interpretations. Two people can experience identical circumstances and draw completely different meanings from them. The meaning you assign to your experiences shapes your future far more than the experiences themselves. Consider how you interpret rejection. Most people see rejection as evidence of their inadequacy. Winners see it as evidence of their courage. They understand that rejection is the toll paid for attempting something worthwhile. The average person receives more rejections by age 18 than they do for the rest of their life. Why? Because children naturally attempt challenging things, while adults avoid situations where rejection is possible. The child falls and rises repeatedly while learning to walk. The adult refuses to attempt anything that might result in a fall. To win at the highest levels, you must reclaim that childlike resilience. You must tell yourself the productive lie that rejection is redirection, not failure. Every no brings you one step closer to yes, if you persist. I want you to consider something profound. What if your biggest limitations aren't external but internal? What if the primary factor holding you back isn't opportunity, connections, or resources, but your beliefs about what's possible for someone like you? The most insidious limitations are the ones we accept without question. That's not realistic for me. People from my background don't do that. I'm too old/young/inexperienced/overqualified to start over. These statements feel like protection, but they're actually prison bars. They seem like wisdom, but they're actually surrender. Winners refuse these limitations. They adopt the radical belief that their potential exceeds their past performance. They insist that their identity is fluid, not fixed. They tell themselves that they determine their destiny through their daily choices, not their circumstances. Are these beliefs factually accurate for everyone? Perhaps not, but they become true for those who act as if they're true. Success is never convenient. It never arrives at the perfect moment. It never comes with a guarantee. Those who achieve greatness do so not because conditions are ideal, but because they refuse to wait for ideal conditions. Success is never convenient. It never arrives at the perfect moment. It never comes with a guarantee. Those who achieve greatness do so not because conditions are ideal, but because they refuse to wait for ideal conditions. And that brings us to a fundamental truth. The outer world is merely a reflection of your inner world. Every result you experience externally began as a thought, belief, or decision internally. When you master your inner game, your outer game transforms automatically. Have you noticed how some people seem to attract opportunity wherever they go? Is it luck, connections, special talents? No, they've mastered something far more valuable: their mental and emotional states, their habits, and their responses to life's inevitable challenges. The quality of your life is determined not by what happens to you, but by what happens in you. Two farmers can experience identical weather conditions, yet one produces an abundant harvest while the other barely survives. The difference isn't the soil or the rain, it's the farmer. Most people wait for circumstances to change before they'll change. That's backward thinking. Circumstances respond to your growth, not the other way around. You don't have to wait for a promotion to become a leader. You don't have to wait for wealth to develop wealth consciousness. You don't have to wait for better relationships to become more relationally intelligent. The secret is simple, but profound. Become the person who deserves what you desire. If you want $1 million business, develop $1 million thinking, $1 million habits, $1 million standards. The world doesn't respond to your desires. It responds to your identity. I worked with an entrepreneur who complained constantly about unreliable employees. No one takes ownership, he lamented. Everyone requires constant supervision. His solution? More rules, more oversight, more control. I asked him a simple question. What kind of person attracts reliable, self-motivated team members? He then slowly realized the problem wasn't his employees. It was himself. He had become someone who expected disappointment, who projected distrust, who micromanaged out of fear. His outer world mirrored his inner state perfectly. Over 6 months, he transformed his leadership philosophy. He began assuming the best about people. He granted autonomy before it was earned. He celebrated initiative rather than mere obedience. Within a year, his turnover dropped by 60%. Same company, same industry, same labor market, different leader. This pattern applies universally. Your financial struggles aren't primarily about economics. They're about your relationship with money, wealth, and value creation. Your health challenges aren't just biological. They're about your relationship with discipline, pleasure, and long-term thinking. Your relationship difficulties aren't just about compatibility. They're about your capacity for understanding, patience, and authentic communication. Master your inner world and watch your outer world rearrange itself to match. But how? How do you transform internally when external evidence contradicts your aspirations? This is where productive self-deception, those strategic lies I mentioned earlier, becomes essential. Life operates in seasons and cycles. Just as nature moves through spring, summer, fall, and winter, your journey will include periods of growth, abundance, harvest, and rest. Understanding these natural rhythms gives you tremendous power because you can align your efforts with the appropriate season. Most people fail because they try to harvest during planting season or plant during harvest season. They misalign their actions with the natural progression of achievement. There are seasons for learning, seasons for building, seasons for scaling, and seasons for consolidating. There are seasons for bold action and seasons for patient waiting. Wisdom lies in recognizing which season you're in and acting accordingly. I know a musician who spent 10 years in what appeared to be obscurity. While his peers chased fame through aggressive self-promotion, he focused relentlessly on mastery. I'm in a learning season, he explained when questioned about his apparent lack of ambition. Those around him saw stagnation. He saw preparation. During his winter, it developed skills, perspective, and material that would have been impossible if he'd prematurely pushed for recognition. When he finally stepped onto the bigger stage, his overnight success was a decade in the making. He understood something vital. You cannot rush the seasons, but you can work in harmony with them. The amateur resists life's seasons, fighting against necessary periods of challenge or slowdown. The professional accepts each season's purpose, extracting its unique value while preparing for the next phase. Remember this: winter isn't a punishment. It's preparation for spring. Difficulties aren't random cruelties. They're opportunities for necessary growth. The seed doesn't resent the darkness of soil. It uses that darkness to transform into something greater. Are you respecting the season you're in, or are you fighting against it, demanding harvest when you should be planting, insisting on expansion when consolidation is required? The pattern of planting and harvesting applies beyond agriculture. It's a universal principle governing all achievement. Whatever you plant consistently, you will eventually harvest abundantly. But there's always a gap between planting and harvesting, a period where your efforts seem to produce no visible results. This gap tests most people's resolve. They plant the seeds of a new habit, relationship, or business venture. But when immediate results don't appear, they dig up their seeds to check if they're growing. Of course, this interrupts the very process they hope to nurture. Winners understand the principle of gestation. Every significant outcome has a natural development period that cannot be rushed. Just as a child develops in the womb for 9 months, whether the mother is patient or not, your goals will unfold according to their own timeline. You can nourish the process, but you cannot force it. I remember coaching a sales team that implemented a new prospecting system. For 6 weeks, their numbers actually declined as they adjusted to the new approach. Management panicked and nearly reverted to their old ineffective methods. I convinced them to persist for just 2 more weeks. By week 8, the numbers began improving. By week 12, they had surpassed their previous records. By month 6, they had doubled their average sales. Had they surrendered to impatience, they would have lost these gains forever, never knowing what might have been. Patience isn't passive waiting. It's active trust in the process you've initiated. It's continuing to plant and water even when the ground appears barren. It's understanding that powerful outcomes require adequate incubation. This principle connects directly to the compound effect, the strategy of reaping massive rewards from a series of small, smart choices. Success isn't the result of grand, dramatic actions. It's the accumulated impact of consistent, seemingly minor decisions that compound over time. If you save just $5 a day with reasonable investment returns, you'll have over $1 million in 50 years. If you read just 10 pages daily, you'll complete 3,650 pages, equivalent to 12 minus 15 books in a year. If you improve any skill by just 1% each day, you'll be 37 times better in 1 year. Small hinges swing big doors. Tiny adjustments in daily habits create massive variations in destination. I once worked with 2 financial advisors who started at the same firm on the same day with virtually identical backgrounds. One decided to make just 5 more calls than required each day. The other did precisely what was expected, no more, no less. This small difference, just 5 extra calls daily, seemed negligible in the short term. Both advisors performed similarly for the first few months, but over 3 years, the compound effect became undeniable. The advisor who made those extra calls had built a client base 50% larger than his counterparts. 5 years later, the difference had grown to 200%. 10 years later, one was a partner, while the other remained in the same position. The tragedy is that the second advisor worked just as hard. He showed up every day. He fulfilled his responsibilities. But he never understood the compound effect of small actions multiplied by time. What small discipline, if practiced consistently, would create the largest results in your life? What tiny habit maintained daily would transform your health, relationships, finances, or mindset? Identify that keystone habit and protect it religiously. But consistency requires motivation, and motivation fluctuates naturally. So how do you maintain consistent action when feelings inevitably change? Through systems, not inspiration. Winners design systems that make their success virtually inevitable. They create environments, routines, and accountability structures that pull them toward their goals even when motivation ebbs. Consider the difference between someone who says, "I'll exercise when I feel like it," and someone who says, "I meet my trainer at 6 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday." The first approach relies on fluctuating emotions. The second creates external accountability that transcends feelings. Your life responds not to what you intend to do, but to what you're structured to do. Examine the systems in your life. Are they designed for the outcomes you desire, or did they evolve haphazardly? Are they making excellence inevitable, or making mediocrity comfortable? A client once complained about his inability to maintain a consistent exercise routine. When we examined his schedule, the problem became obvious. He had planned his workouts for 8 p.m. after a full day of work, family responsibilities, and commuting. By that hour, his willpower was depleted, and the couch seemed vastly more appealing than the treadmill. We restructured his system, moving his exercise to 5:30 a.m. before the day's demands could derail his intentions. Within 2 weeks, his consistency had improved dramatically. His motivation hadn't increased, his system had simply become more effective. Winners create systems for their finances, relationships, health, learning, and productivity. They don't rely on memory, mood, or momentary inspiration. They build structures that naturally guide them toward desired behaviors and away from undesired ones. This brings us to a profound truth about mastery. Your habits form your character, and your character determines your destiny. What you do daily, often unconsciously, shapes what you become permanently. Most people vastly overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and dramatically underestimate what they can achieve in a decade of consistent effort. They want immediate transformation without understanding that true change is incremental, cumulative, and often invisible until a critical threshold is reached. Think of heating water. As you apply steady heat, the temperature rises 1 degree at a time. 212 degrees looks identical to 211 degrees. But at 212, something remarkable happens. The water boils, changing state entirely. The transformation appears sudden, but it resulted from persistent, patient application of heat. Your growth works the same way. You develop degree by degree, day by day, choice by choice. For a long time, progress seems minimal. Then suddenly, you reach a threshold where everything changes. Opportunities multiply. Recognition arrives. Results accelerate dramatically. Most people give up at 211 degrees, never realizing how close they were to breakthrough. The key is understanding that significant achievements require significant time. The culture promotes overnight success stories while conveniently omitting the years of preparation that preceded the sudden breakthrough. I recall working with an overnight success who appeared to come from nowhere to build a $50 million company in 18 months. The media loved his story. What they didn't report were the 3 previous businesses he had built and sold, the 15 years he had spent mastering his industry, and the network of relationships he had cultivated for decades. His 18-month miracle was actually the culmination of a 20-year journey. Are you willing to invest the necessary time in your goals? Or are you hoping to shortcut the natural progression of mastery? Are you committed to the consistent application of effort, even when results remain invisible? Remember, time will pass regardless of what you do. 5 years from now, you will be 5 years older, whether you pursue your ambitions or not. The only question is, what will you have to show for that time? Understanding the natural rhythms of achievement prevents the discouragement that derails most people. When you recognize that plateaus are normal, that progress is non-linear, that breakthroughs follow periods of apparent stagnation, you develop the patience to persist when others surrender. This persistence separates the extraordinary from the merely good. Talent is common. Resources can be acquired. But the capacity to maintain focused effort through difficulties, doubts, and delays, that capacity is rare and invaluable. I've studied thousands of successful individuals across diverse fields, and I've found that persistence trumps native ability almost every time. The naturally gifted often falter when they first encounter serious resistance because they've never developed the crucial skill of pressing through difficulty. Those who achieve lasting success have usually failed their way forward, using each setback as education rather than evidence of their limitations. Consider a time when you abandoned a worthy goal because progress seemed too slow or obstacles too numerous. What might have happened if you had persisted just a little longer? What breakthroughs might have awaited just beyond your point of surrender? The path to mastery in any area follows predictable phases. First comes the honeymoon phase, where enthusiasm runs high and progress comes easily. This is followed by the plateau phase, where effort increases while visible progress decreases. Many quit here, not understanding that this plateau is actually a period of unconscious assimilation, where your mind and body integrate what you've learned before the next breakthrough. After the plateau comes the mastery phase, where hard-won skills become seemingly effortless habits. What once required conscious attention now happens automatically, freeing your focus for higher-level challenges. These phases repeat at each new level of achievement. Recognizing them allows you to navigate the journey with appropriate expectations, preventing the discouragement that leads to premature surrender. As you progress toward mastery, you'll discover another crucial truth. Results lag behind reality. The outcomes you're experiencing today were created by actions and decisions from your past. The actions and decisions you're making today are creating outcomes you won't experience immediately. This lag between cause and effect explains why some people get away with poor choices for so long, and why some don't see the rewards of good choices right away. The law of the harvest is unforgiving. You reap what you sow, but not at the same time. I once consulted for a company experiencing explosive growth. Their leadership was euphoric, making ambitious expansion plans based on their remarkable numbers. When I examined their internal processes, I found alarming deficiencies in their customer service systems, problems masked by their rapid growth. Your current success is the result of excellent work from 3 years ago, I warned them. But today's operational problems are creating tomorrow's crisis. They dismissed my concerns, intoxicated by their present results. 2 years later, their growth had not only stopped but reversed dramatically as customer dissatisfaction finally caught up with them. The opposite scenario plays out just as often. I've worked with professionals who implemented significant improvements in their skills, systems, or strategies, yet saw no immediate impact on their results. Those who persisted eventually experienced the delayed reward of their efforts, while those who surrendered missed the harvest they had already planted. This lag between cause and effect is why integrity matters so profoundly. When you act with integrity, doing the right thing regardless of immediate outcome, you're honoring the reality that today's choices create tomorrow's circumstances. You're living in alignment with how reality actually works, not how you might wish it worked. The discipline of aligning daily actions with long-term values is the essence of character. And character isn't formed in moments of great challenge. It's formed in the countless small choices that precede the great challenge. By the time the defining moment arrives, your choice has already been made through the habits you've developed. Think about what this means. Your future is being determined right now by the seemingly inconsequential choices you're making today. The book you choose to read or not read, the conversation you choose to have or avoid, the expense you choose to eliminate or justify, the skill you choose to practice or neglect. These choices may seem minor in isolation. Connected to time, they become destiny. Winners understand this connection between present disciplines and future rewards. They're willing to do what others won't so they can eventually have what others can't. They accept temporary discomfort for permanent improvement. Are you making choices today that will create the tomorrow you desire? Or are you making choices that feel good now but mortgage your future? Are you living primarily in the moment or primarily in vision? The truly successful live simultaneously in 2 time frames, fully present for today's responsibilities while clearly focused on tomorrow's possibilities. They neither sacrifice the future for momentary pleasure nor sacrifice present joy for future achievement. They harmonize the present and future through principled living. Your life moves in the direction of your strongest thoughts. If your thinking is predominantly negative, worried, or limited, your life automatically orients toward those qualities. If your thinking is predominantly positive, confident, and expansive, your life naturally develops in those directions. This isn't mystical, it's practical psychology. Your thoughts determine your perceptions. Your perceptions influence your decisions. Your decisions direct your actions. Your actions create your results. Change the initial link in this chain, your thoughts, and everything else transforms accordingly. Most people's thinking is reactive and circumstantial. They think thoughts that merely respond to or reflect their current conditions. Winners think proactively and intentionally. They deliberately choose thoughts that create their desired future, regardless of present circumstances. When you change your thinking, you change your life, not because positive thinking magically alters external reality, but because transformed thinking leads to transformed perception, which produces transformed decisions, creating transformed actions and ultimately transformed results.